Hey devs, welcome to WebStylePress. If you are new here, subscribe and hit bell icon. Subscriptions and likes are fuel that keep the channel going. This is the most important React tutorial based on few key concepts related to components. This is part 2 of this series and it's final. If you haven't checked part 1, go check it out. Link is in the description. It is this one, class versus function part 1. And the title for this video is Stateful, Stateless, Dumb, Functional, Function-Based, Function Component versus Class Component. This was part 1. Part 1 is equally important. I have 3 components simultaneously opened on screen, and so font size is small. Watch this video in full screen mode and select 1080p video quality to clearly see what's going on. If you have been using React for a while and still struggle with different ways of using components, this video will help you a lot. In part 1, we looked into class component and function component. Then we looked into stateful and stateless components, and we discussed dumb components. We looked into state in class components and state in function component via hooks. So this is class component and this is state inside the constructor, and this is a function component and it's stateful component, and this is the state for this function component. And these are hooks, use state and use effect. We discussed that class is an object, and there are many ways you can use a function component. We looked into ways of importing and exporting different components. In this video, we are exploring further. I felt that I can share some more on this topic, so here it is, part 2. I have got this app, and this is the app.js, and it contains a class-based component. And then I have got 3 components in components folder: comp2.js, comp3.js, and comp4.js. So this is class-based component, it is stateful, and it is class component. It is importing React and component from React, and note that you can use these imports with or without semicolon. Without semicolon it will work. This is the output for my app, and in this area you can see the output for component 1, and this is component 2, this is 3, and this is component 4. And let me go through this quickly. So this is counter value, this is also count, and this is a number, this is a string, and this is a boolean. So change name to John Doe. So this is John, and if we click at it, it turns into John Doe. And if we change name to Lady Gaga, and if we click at that, this is changed into different string. And then this is toggle for this one, it toggles on off. And here in component 2, increment counter, so this is the counter, its value is 1 right here, and if I click add this increment counter button, it increments the counter value. And this is component 4, so this is some output, and this is change state for first component from 4th component. So if I click here, you will see some change here. So this text appeared in component 1, that is app.js. So for React, you can choose to use semicolons, or you can choose to not use semicolons. And then here also you can use extension for files while importing, like this .js, or you can choose to not use .js extension for imports. And these are imports for component 2 and 3, and this import is different, and it is using these curly braces because for component 4 we don't have a default export, so that is we have to use curly braces here. So this is component 4, it is export const, it has no default export. So inside the class-based component we have got our constructor, and here we have got this state, and this state has got many values. So these are key value pair. This is number counter 0, initial value is 0, and the count initial value 10, this is also number, and then name is string, and the toggle is boolean value true or false, and then text is string. So multiple values stored in same object of state. And also constructor, inside the constructor we bind functions if we are not using fat arrow. So in case of stateful component but a function component, here's our state. State is separate for each new element. You can define multiple states like this. So here it was an object, and there were multiple key value pairs were stored in it. But here for the function component the case is different. We are defining our state here like this in class-based component, and for the function component we will define state like this. And we are using useState and useEffect hooks for function component. And then this is component did mount and component will unmount. Component did mount, inside component did mount we are just changing the state of count, this one, and incrementing it with 10. When the component mounts and loads, then we are incrementing it with 10. So component did mount is lifecycle method, and you use it in class-based components. And also component did mount can be used for other purposes as well. You can do API call here, and then after API call you can store data in state here, and then serve that data down the line in child components. So these lifecycle methods for a component are used in a class-based component, but for the function component this use effect is sufficient for this one and this. You don't need these lifecycle methods in a function component. This use effect will do the job. And here we have defined counter, and its initial value is 0, and then we are changing the value for this counter to from 0 to 1 right here. And then we are this is the name, a string in another state, and we are setting its name to a different name. We're changing the string, and then use these brackets with use effect, and inside these brackets you can place key variables here, variables that will trigger reloading of components on change. and using empty brackets will make sure to run the effect only once. These empty brackets will save your component to trigger an infinite loop. So use these brackets, or you can use certain key values here. If you want to reload the component when these values change, you can use those values here. And instead of these, as these are in class component, for function component you use this React hook, that is use effect, and then you define state here like this in function component, but in class component definition of state is like this. And for class based components you use this keyword, but in function components we don't use this keyword. Let's see further, and here we have got this one, regular function. So this is the function call, and note that there is no function keyword for this one, just the function name. And inside this function we are changing the state and we are changing the name, that is this one, from John to John Doe. And if we use a function like this, we will have to bind it inside constructor like this. So this is the change name of the function, and we will use like this dot change name is equal to this dot change name dot bind this. Otherwise that won't work. If you want to avoid this binding, and I believe that you should avoid to use this binding here, because you will end up using a lot of bindings here equivalent to functions that you have used here. So instead of this function you can also use fat arrow. This fat arrow will save you from this binding, then you don't need this binding and it will serve the purpose. And this one here you can pass parameters here, so this is doing the same thing that it was doing. And then get name in parameter, and this is another function that is receiving the name and then changing the name. Multiple ways of doing same thing, but remember that there is no function here, there is no function keyword here. And then for the boolean value true or false, you can just get the previous state and then change that boolean value to like this, toggle, and then not previous state dot toggle. Toggle is in our state and that is true, and then when you will change it you will just get the previous state and then make it not equal to previous state dot toggle. This is another function, and we are changing the text here. We are setting the text here in fact. So for this function component we use functions like this, function calls. So this is counter change and with the fat arrow, and then we are using set counter, this one we are changing this value and we are incrementing it with 1. But here you see this one, const. For a class based component there's no function keyword or const for these functions, but for this you use const here for a function component. So let's go further, and here we see the destructuring. If you want to avoid this dot something, then you can destructure the properties here. We are getting all these values from this state by using this destructuring from this dot state. So this dot state has got all these values, and we are destructuring these here so that we can avoid using this keyword. And then we are just using this name directly. And as you can see, if I comment this line, you can see that linter shows error, that this is not found. But when I will use this dot state dot counter, then this will be alright. Similarly, this dot state dot count, and it will be alright now. But we want to avoid repetition of this dot state, so we have destructured these here. From this dot state we are retrieving values for these keys, and we are using these directly here. So here is the value for the counter, that is this dot state dot counter. We are using this keyword here, this dot state dot counter, and that is this one, because the counter was 0. And then we have got the counter value without this dot state, and then count, and then name, and 0, 20. So 20 is the count. So count was 10, but we changed it, we incremented it with 10, so it became 20. When component loads, it becomes 20. So we are seeing 20 here. So this is John, this value, name, and then we have got, this is the commenting. If we want to use comment in JSX, then you will use it like this, inside curly braces. This is the commenting in JSX, in React.js. And this is simple if else statement. If toggle, we have destructured toggle from this dot state, right? And so this is toggle. If toggle is true, then display on. This is string, right? In other case, just display off. You can execute statements here. Like this. Let's change it to this one, and as you can see, the values here. And then we are just displaying the text that is right now not here, but it will be here. And so this is the on click and click handlers, and basically event handling in React.js. This is how event handling works. So this is a button, and it says change name to John Doe. So this is the button, it says change name to John Doe, and on click of this button we are using this dot change name. So change name is a function call. This is change name, and it is just changing the name to a different string. And right now it is changing, this will change to John Doe, and it changed. But if I comment this and if I uncomment our function without fat arrow, then what will happen? As you can see, it triggered an error. So if I enable this binding for this change name, then it works. But I will prefer fat arrow here. So this was a function and event handling, and let's see what we have got next. So on click, change name to this one. So change same name to a different string. So we are using this dot change name and we are passing the name here as an argument. Change name to, this is our function, and this is expecting and this is receiving value here, and we are using this value here for our name in state. So you will have to use it like this, and it will work. It is working. And let's see if I remove this and just use this dot change name to this one. Then it gives me an error. So this one is necessary too. And then we have got our next event handler, and that is on click this dot handle toggle. So we are using this because it is a class based component. So handle toggle. So what we have got in handle toggle, inside handle toggle we have got we are just, this is a boolean, true or false toggle, and we are just toggling its state. If it is true, it will be false. If it is false, it will be true. So toggle will be not equal to previous state of toggle. Toggle on off. And then here we have got component 2, component 3. We are passing some values like here name, second name, and name, third name. These are going into component 2 and component 3. And then we have got component 4, and we are passing name, and this is the value, and then position, this is the value, this is the string, this is also string, and then this is the number count. These are the values we are passing to component 4, and then we are passing an event handler as well, pointer to an event handler. So this is the handle change from fourth trigger. So this is just a pointer, and it is pointing towards this function, and we have not used this keyword here. We have used this here, and here as well, but here we have not used this because we have destructured it here. Note that we have not used it here because these values, we are destructuring these values from this dot state, this dot state, this dot state. So those values are related to this dot state. The values those that are inside this state, but this is not inside the state. This is the function that is not inside the state, and we will destructure it from just this keyword. So we have destructured it here. It is different. This scenario is different from these one. We used this dot, this function name, this dot, this function name here for these, but for this we haven't used this because we have destructured it here from this keyword, and these values were in state. So for this, destructuring will be like this dot state is equal to this dot. So note the difference here, very important. And you will destructure after render and before return. Classes use render. So when there are hooks, why we are looking at classes when there are hooks already, and you can use hooks, and you can easily use state and lifecycle methods. Why are we looking at classes? The reason is you won't work on new projects always. Mostly you will work on legacy projects or the projects that have been done already, and you will make changes to the code of old projects that will have classes. And classes are not going anywhere. Classes will be here, and also you will deal with the code with class-based functions a lot. So that is why class is important, and that is why you should study class and also hooks and function components as well. So we are passing a pointer to for this function to fourth component, and so this is class-based component. This will use render, and it will use this keyword if you have to, well, you don't have to. If you use this destructuring, then you will not use this keyword a lot. So there is huge difference in for this class-based component for this one constructor, and the way we define the state here, and then the way we bind things here, and then these are lifecycle methods that are different for the function-based component. And also this is the difference. Here is no function keyword and here is no const, but in function-based components you will use const for these functions. So use state, use effect, hooks. We define the state, and then this is our lifecycle method use effect that is sufficient for component will mount or component did mount and more. So this one is sufficient, and you can use multiple things. You can perform multiple actions inside this use effect, but for these, the defining of state, you will use multiple lines or multiple separate state definitions for every new element that needs state. And also I said that these brackets are necessary. These are good to use. These will save the component from infinite loop. So here we are performing simple one action. I wanted to show you how can you use event handling inside function component and inside class-based component. So this button on click triggers this counter change event handler, and this is a function with the const, and all it does is it accesses this set counter, and then it takes this counter, this value is stored here, and then set counter takes this one and increments it with 1, counter plus 1. So as you can see, increment counter, this is being incremented. So note the change. Function here or event handler here, and function or event handler here. Class based component, function component. And this is stateful function component. This is stateful class based component. This is stateful component, and it is class based component. And this is function component, but stateful component. It is not dumb component because it has got the state. I forgot to mention one thing for function component. So on click, this counter change, it increments our state for the counter. But what if you have to perform this action without this function? You can do that. You can just comment this, and you can comment this, and we have got another event handler here, inline event handler, you can say. And then this is a button that is on click, set counter +1. So this counter +1, and set counter is this one. But you have to use this one before you use this. This was component 2, so it is working now. But if we remove this one, it will not work. Rect limits the number of renders, infinite loop. So to avoid this is necessary. And as you can see, this will work now. So you can use the event handler like this, or you can use the standard way, that is this one, a function call. And now we look into our third component. Another thing that I forgot to mention, you destructure stuff in class based components here after render and before return. Here for the function components, destructuring is performed here. You can use props here, or you can use destructuring right here. Like this. We will see this in component 4. So this is component 3, and this is a dump component. It is just receiving props, and then it is displaying name from these props. This is dump component, this is stateless component, and it is function component. And this is component 3. We passed something here to component 3. This is component 3. We are just passing a name, a value, third name, to this component, props, and then props dot name. Third component, this is the value that we are receiving. And then we have got fourth name. This is a special case. This is a stateless component. Well, I have defined the state in here, but it was stateless before. Now it is stateful. It has become stateful component. And then here we will use stateful component, function component. It is function component, and now it is not dumb component anymore. It was dumb before, but I have used these here. So it is function component and stateful component. A function component can be stateful, or it can be stateless. It can be dumb, or it can be stateful. Right, so this is a special case. this is a const based component, and it has no default export. We are exporting a const, that is comp4, and we are not using props here, we are destructuring here. This is the destructuring for a function component with these curly braces inside these parentheses. So props has got these values. We knew the props had got these values. We have used the name for those values right here, so that we don't have to use props here. We did it like that here, props, and then name from the props dot name. To avoid repetition of props dot something, we have destructured those properties here, and then we have accessed those properties directly here without props dot name, props dot position, props dot count. And this is that on click event, and here we have not used this thing here. We have just used this handle change from fourth. This thing right here is pointing towards this thing, and it has got this value that is again just the pointing towards this one, this function, and then this function is performing the action. So this is just a pointer in our case. And then we had got this name, position, and count. So name, position, and count, this is destructuring in function components, so that we avoid to use props again and again. So component 4 name is being displayed here, and position and count, and then on click handler. This is the, when we will click this button, this is pointing here. That will trigger this function here, and we destructured it here. That is why we didn't use this dot that function name, and it is just changing the value of text in this state to this one, and then we are displaying it here inside component 1. When this value gets changed, it will be then reflected here. So this was the button, and if we will click here, this value will appear here. So these are few things that you should keep in mind, that there is a lot that goes on while working with class-based components and even function-based components. And function components can be different. Like these can be dumb, or these can be stateful or stateless, and the function components can be can use export, like export default function, and or these can be export const function name. So these are some key differences and few things to keep in mind while dealing with the React components. And it is safe to say that you will see this method a lot. Most components will be like this. That will be dumb components or stateless components. Most components will be like this. That will just take the props, you can destructure it here, and then those props will be used inside this function. But for stateful components, you will see something like this most of the time. Or you can just declare it like this. This is also stateful function component, and this is like export default function and then function name. And here you will see this one, export const come4, but you will most probably see this more often without a default export. And then for this one, this is the same function component. As we have defined state and use effect, and then we have used event handling here with the const, you can similarly you can do all of these here for this const based function component. So I have got two more things to share with you. One is this one, this extension ES7 React Redux GraphQL React Native Snippets. This is Visual Studio Code, and if we go to extensions, you should use these two extensions while working with React or JavaScript. So this one is ES6 React Redux. This is an extension, and it will help you a lot. Like, it has got these you can use this IMP, will give you this one. IMR will give you import React from React. Like, it will support you, and you can generate snippets by using these shortcodes. And then there is this ESLint. Use this extension. You see these squiggly lines below this. It is saying that linter is pointing out that state is declared but is not being used in this component. So ESLint helps you to write better code. If you make mistake, it will point out that where can be the mistake. Also, one more thing, there is a wrapper div. You have to use a wrapper div for your component. You can skip the div, you can just use it like this. You can use fragment here as well, or div, but you can also use these brackets, just starting and closing tags here. It will also work. So use these two extensions, and let me show you. If I use IMR here and enter, it will give me this statement. And if I use RCC, then it will give me this code. You can use these snippets, you can generate these snippets. It will save a lot of time. Or if I use RPCE, then you will get this snippet. And then you can use RFC, React function component. This will give you a function component. So these extensions will save a lot of time, and you can read all about it here. Also, you have got these snippets here, different ways, many ways of using and writing functions and components. These are snippets, and their codes that you can remember to use later on, and then ESLint. These are very helpful while doing React. So I hope you liked this video. If I missed anything or you have something to add, you can comment down below, ask questions related to this topic. If you haven't already subscribed, subscribe to the channel and hit bell icon to receive updates. Join us on social media, links are in the description below. Stay tuned for more updates. I will see you in the next video.